The Switch eShop, known for its incredible library, occasionally experiences the removal of a game. This it is a delisting. While I can't predict whether these games will ever make a comeback, we can explore the reasons behind their removal. Today, we'll dive into various causes, some logical, others unfortunate, and a few are simply stupid. I will also add here, more often than not, it comes down to the expiration of licensing agreements, whether for characters, music, or other aspects, and this leads to a decision not to renew. Ultimately, it boils down to money, as is often the case with life. You know, someone's got to get paid, and if the funds aren't there, the game gets pulled. Today, we'll look into if these are games you should miss, and if there's still a way to obtain them through a physical release. Now, if you enjoy this video, subscribe, it helps us out a huge amount, and let's get into it. Jump Force, a unique fusion of various iconic manga series, was a game I personally really enjoyed. It was presented in an arena brawler style, it was developed by Bandai Namco, and it was known for its simple yet effective controls, which is really a hallmark of the genre. What really made it stand out for me personally was just its excellent portrayal of the character's essence and power, and it was also a very good port. Unfortunately, though, not everyone shared this sentiment. The game faced criticism for its basic storyline and formulaic approach. The premise, for me, I thought it was alright. It revolved around the real world merging with the Jump universes, prompting us to save the world from an army known as the Venoms. Despite this, the decision to delist the game, along with the shutdown of its online servers, it wasn't entirely unexpected. Considering the huge roster of characters, licensing must have been a nightmare. Now, for fans, there is a silver lining. Jump Force had a physical release, so you can still find it on the resale market. However, it's important to note that the game now centers solely around that single player experience. Reflecting on the world of game development, it's quite striking how the hard work and dedication of developers can be swiftly negated by the delisting of a game, yet sometimes there is a hint of positivity in these removals. Consider the case of Popeye. This game, to put it mildly, was a superficial effort, a cash grab, lacking in both a compelling narrative or engaging gameplay. Reduced though to a mere collectathon, it really did a disservice to the legacy of what is a beloved character. The launch was also incredibly interesting with this game. When several YouTubers began critiquing the game, the publisher's response was, to say the least, unconventional. They opted for legal threats. However, far from intimidating anyone, this move absolutely backfired, becoming the subject of widespread ridicule. It served to highlight a rather futile effort to quash legitimate criticism. Now, looking forward, we can only hope that other classic characters are spared such mishandling, but unfortunately, my optimism, it's definitely tempered by the reality of this industry. You know, Popeye never saw a physical release, thankfully, and part of me is now hopeful it will fade into the obscurity it absolutely deserves. It was, again, a cheap cash-in. This incident likely stemmed then from licensing issues, but there's a small part of me that hopes when renewal time came, the IP owners made the wise decision to decline. Now let's turn our attention to Knockout City, a game that epitomized the nature of many live service games. Now, despite being free to play, it only managed to be live for around 2 years before delisting, a fate that is not uncommon in this gaming model. Yet the game honestly had its charm. It revolved around 3-on-3 dodgeball battles, and it was all set in vibrant neon-lit urban playgrounds. The allure of Knockout City for me lay in its gameplay, straightforward enough for beginners to grasp, but with layers of complexity for those who delve deeper. Think like mastering trick shots and deceptive throws. The question arises though, why did it shut down after its 9th season update? And the answer is nuanced. In a detailed blog post, the developers shed light on the challenges they faced, particularly the difficulty of maintaining the game with a smaller team while also aspiring to develop new titles. Basically, the endeavor proved too demanding in terms of time and resources. However, looking closer, I suspect financial reasons played a significant role. Given its release under the Electronic Arts Originals label, it likely didn't meet revenue expectations. You know, it's no secret that EA tends to hold on to profitable projects, and if Knockout City had been financially successful, they would have no doubt expanded that development team. I enjoyed this game and I was there for its final weeks, but unfortunately it seems we'll never get to play it again. There was also no physical release, but that makes sense given its reliance on online servers. You know, without them, any physical copies would be simply redundant. Reflecting on the delisting of several first-party Nintendo Switch games, the term stupidity unfortunately comes to mind. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but take Super Mario 35 for instance. The game was an inventive online twist on the Battle Royale format, where players raced through levels while throwing challenges at each other. It wasn't just fun, this game, it also bolstered what is a lackluster online subscription service. Now, Doug Bowser, president of Nintendo of America, is on record as explaining that the game's limited release was a novel approach to commemorate Mario's 35th anniversary. I would call it a bad business decision personally, but I also can't be overly critical in this situation since the game was offered for free. However, the decision to remove other first-party games I can be critical of. It seems to be driven by pure greed, creating a false sense of scarcity to boost immediate profits. Which games am I referring to? That is Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, which released as part of the 30th anniversary for the Fire Emblem series, and then Super Mario 3D All-Stars, which celebrated Mario's 35th anniversary. These are standout games integral to Nintendo's legacy, and their limited availability was simply a disservice to fans. We're talking about losing a classic tactical RPG and a cornerstone of Nintendo's history. Now, thankfully, both of these games did at least see physical releases, albeit in a limited fashion. Fire Emblem was particularly exclusive, offered only as a collector's edition with a redeemable code in a box. Now, as a result, prices on the secondary market for this one, I'd say fans are facing probably north of $100 to obtain a copy. Super Mario 3D All-Stars isn't so bad, you can find that close to retail price still frequently, but for me, Nintendo's approach to these releases is just questionable, and it really seems at odds with the spirit of celebrating classic games. The final Nintendo first-party title makes more sense, Fitness Boxing. It received a sequel, and this removal was likely due to expiring licensing with the music that featured in the game. It did receive a physical release as well, and you'll get it for around $20 to $30 on eBay, so it's definitely not bad at all. I'd personally instead opt for the more recent Fitness Boxing Fist of the North Star, which is definitely a fun little crossover. Minecraft Story Mode, the completed adventure developed by Telltale Games, was an episodic point-and-click adventure game that drew its inspiration from the World of Warcraft. Now, the story centered around Jesse embarking on a quest to find the Order of the Stone and thwart a looming evil. Although not the pinnacle of Telltale's offerings, it was still an enjoyable spin-off, adding a narrative depth to the Minecraft universe. Now, no doubt here, the game's delisting was influenced by a combination of factors. Licensing issues likely played a role, and then the closure of Telltale Games compounded the problem. The situation was further complicated by the statement issued by the team, which indicated that Minecraft Story Mode would no longer be supported after June 25th, 2019. Now, this notification is pretty standard, but where it got unique was it urged players who had purchased the game to download all episodes before the service was discontinued. This kind of implies that access to the content might not be possible after that date. That situation definitely raises a concern. Delisting, I don't really have a problem with, things do happen, but the idea that you can't even download it anymore is a scary reality, and no doubt a reality of what is just digital game ownership in this day and age. The possibility that we could lose access to content is definitely, I guess, alarming, if anything. Now, for those who maybe owned Minecraft Story Mode, it would be interesting to hear about your experiences and whether you've been able to access the game post-delisting. Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Killer Queen Black was a fantastic multiplayer strategy game. It was a personal favourite of mine that really stung when it was delisted. Now, before arriving on the Switch, it had already made a name for itself in arcades and on other platforms, and the game's concept was a bit complex, but in essence you could play as one of 3 character types, each vying for one of 3 victory conditions to clinch the crown. Now, with support for up to 8 players, the gameplay here was absolutely manic. This, though, is where it gets interesting. The delisting of Killer Queen Black is a unique case, as it was largely beyond the developer's control. It was built using Amazon GameSparks, and when this service was shut down, transitioning the game to another platform would have required almost an entire rebuild of the game. Now, fortunately, Killer Queen Black did get a physical release. You can find copies at reasonable prices, $20 to $30 maximum. And why would you do this? Well, the local multiplayer remains as entertaining as ever, and I would absolutely recommend it. Though I can't now devote as much time to it as I did before, I still hold out hope for a sequel because it is a hidden gem. The Lost Child holds a special place as one of the initial games I discussed on SwitchCorner. Now, despite receiving mixed reception, I really did enjoy it. Now, it's a first-person dungeon crawler with a really unique narrative. It centers around an occult journalist who encounters a girl that has a mystical device capable of trapping entities. The objective here, straightforward, it is to survive and unravel this mystery. Although the pacing could be a little bit slow at points, the game's overall style I really liked. And it was also one of my earlier kind of forays into this genre, and it really helped grow my interest in it. The delisting of The Lost Child was a consequence of NIS America's licensing agreement expiring. The publisher had acquired the rights from another company, and with the license coming to an end, the game of course could no longer be sold digitally. This was also the case for a game called God Wars, which was delisted at the very same time, the exact same situation, and that one, it was a tactical RPG. Now, both of these games, they were fortunate enough to have physical editions, a common practice for NIS America, though I will add they're pretty much well known now for doing things in limited quantities. This extremely limited production though is now reflected in their current market price. The Lost Child is fetching upwards of $100, while God Wars is much more reasonable, right around $40. Given their rarity now and the nature of the collector's market, it is likely these prices will continue to rise. The unexpected delisting of Warsaw from the Switch eShop then caught me by surprise, a fact I only realised while preparing this video. Despite not receiving widespread attention, Warsaw offered an engaging twist on the Darkest Dungeons format, all set against a World War backdrop. Admittedly, the game had its criticisms, like relying too much on luck and some difficulty balancing issues, but it remained a highly entertaining experience. Also, I imagine its brutal difficulty added to the challenge, potentially frustrating many players. Personally though, I really like it and I do recommend it often, particularly noting it's a really good port on the Switch. Now, the circumstance of its delisting though was somewhat unusual. It was pulled due to licensing issues, but the removal occurred 30 days earlier than the initially announced date, which likely disappointed those who were aware of this time frame. However, there is a silver lining. Soon after its delisting, the game re-emerged as Warsaw Rising City of Heroes, available exclusively on Steam, and it is now free to play. This version simplified some strategic elements of the original game, but it has gained recognition as an important tool for educating about Polish history. It actually now stands alongside other recognized historical games in an educational role. Now, unfortunately for those who would have wanted to check out the Nintendo Switch build, there was no physical that was released. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is the most recent delisting, January 1st, 2024. This was a release from Limited Run Games, who also produced a no doubt overpriced physical edition. My understanding is they struggled to shift physical units of this collection, and honestly, now I've played it, not surprising, I'd call them below average. It's packing two relatively weak games, an NES entry and a Game Boy release. I picked up the collection right at launch, spent maybe 20 minutes with it, and I've never looked back. I'd also put it out there as well, I do consider myself a massive fan of Bill and Ted. It's just a simple case here. The games are not fun. One's an isometric adventure game with very little happening, and then the Game Boy experience is extremely simple, single-screen gameplay. Packs very little else as well. This collection, it feels like little effort was put in. Not a game I've ever heard anyone reminisce about, and now I really understand why. This was another simple case of licensing, and from the struggles with the physical, I'm gonna guess the sales numbers here just weren't worth them holding onto it. So this selection represents just a fraction of the games that have been delisted from the Switch eShop. Consider Overwatch, which was removed to make way for its sequel. Some games like Forgotten Anne experience a cycle of removal and relisting. In more extreme cases, titles such as Final Sword faced delisting due to serious issues like plagiarism. In this instance, they were copying music from The Legend of Zelda. Now, it would reappear eventually with this music replaced, but I honestly wouldn't part with my cash for that game. It looks awful. I can't even find a trailer. There are also further examples of questionable decisions like Pac-Man 99, which seem to mimic some of Nintendo's own strategies. The truth is, many of the games that get removed from the eShop, they aren't widely missed. However, there are undoubtedly some hidden gems among them, games that deserve to still be available, still online, and still accessible to the influx of new Switch players. Now, do you have any favourite games that got delisted? Let me know in the comments. With that, hit subscribe and join us here for reviews, deals, news and lists daily, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.